Guys, well, yeah, when we got the call from Scott, I was, honored to tie one of Armand's flies. Armand, I didn't know him all that well, but he's still a very special guy to me. When I first started doing the fly fishing shows, probably 6, 7 years ago now, up in Marlborough was my first major show to tie at, and I was nervous. I mean, I done some smaller shows, but I actually sat next to Armand, and so he, he even had he'd flag people down and say, "Come on over, look at this guy's video, watch him tie," and it was great having somebody kind of ease me into it. And then Armand and I ended up seeing each other all over the place over the last few years. And just last fall, I was up on the Margaree River in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Atlantic salmon fishing, and at this weird little dinner that they have, the Margaree Salmon Association, and it's kind of like the who's who of Atlantic salmon fishing. And who walks in the door but Armand and Sheila? I really couldn't believe it. And I had a great conversation, sat with them that night, and yeah, a lot of fond memories there. And this fly of his go-to fly, I've been practice tying it last couple of days. An interesting pattern. It's got great looking fly, but it also has a lot of kind of interesting pieces to it. So techniques that you can use on this fly, but can also be applied to other patterns, which if you guys have watched my videos on YouTube, you probably know that I'm probably way more into technique than I am into the actual patterns. So without further ado, what's gonna happen here, guys, hopefully, is I'm gonna switch the camera view so you're not looking at my ugly face anymore, and you're gonna be looking at a fly. Hopefully that'll work. But every once in a while, we'll switch back and take a few questions. You can key them in the chat, and I'll try to get them answered. You'll see my face again. So here I'm going to switch to the fly. Hopefully.
Yep, all good.
And there, hopefully everybody can see it. It's looking pretty good. Anyway, what I've got in the vise is Armand suggested tying this on anything from a number 3 to a 2/0 hook. So I've got a 2/0 in here just to be big so everybody can see stuff. And it's a pretty standard Mustad 34007 2/0 non-stainless version here. You get them stainless as well. And hooks like this, I have a Regal vise with a big game jaws. Really, really good for holding big hooks. It has the grooves in the jaws, which hold it absolutely solid. Thread, you can use whatever you want. Mono, gel spun, Kevlar. This is just UTC 140 denier in white. One important thing with this fly, there's a lot of stuff that gets tied in right up at the eye. And so is to absolutely leave a full hook eye length space behind the eye. And we're going to try to not get any materials in there until the very, very end. So there we go. First material to go on is going to be white bucktail. And not all bucktail is created equal. This one is from a good friend of mine, Brad Buzzy, who you see at the shows, Buzz Fly. He's a New Jersey guy, and some of the best bucktail in the business. Real straight fibers, long and beautifully treated. Best fibers for these, right down from the tip, a little ways down into here. I'm going to keep this fairly sparse though, long and sparse. And so nice little plump. If I have any real long ones, I'm going to pull them out. I don't want to stack this. You want that ragged edge on there. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to pull some out of here. I wanted about 2 hooks in length, so nice and long. I am going to trim off just a little bit. One of the things I found is as I get older, my hands get a little less steady. I use my hook to brace my scissors a lot anymore. Get them snipped off. I'm going to start taking wraps, bind that material to the top of the hook shank. One of the ways to keep it on top of the hook shank is if you kind of pull up and toward you and then take wraps, it automatically lands on top of the hook shank. And we do want this on top of the hook shank. Kind of want to build a vertical body on the back part of the fly. This makes it easier to put the eyes on later and the cheeks and everything else. So what I'm doing here is actually squeezing that bucktail just a little bit to get it up on top of the hook shank. Now you could add a little super glue on there if you like, just to make it a little bit more durable. I'm not going to do that right now. The recipe calls for a little flash. I'm just going to use some Flashaboo. Only about 3 strands. I tend to go light on flash. When you look at these flies underwater, flash is really, really visible. Even just a couple strands looks like a lot. So I've snipped 3 strands. I'm going to roughly find their midpoint. Find that to the top of the hook shank. And then I wrap back just a little bit, and then I can grab that front clump and just combine it with the other one. And same deal, kind of up and toward me. Keep that flash bound down right on top. And ideally, you want it to extend just a little past the end of the tail, maybe 1/4 of an inch. I'll get that snipped off right now. Just a little proud of those bucktail fibers. And you know, I think you could use any flash you're comfortable with there. Now I'm going to go back right next to where I took that other clump of hair, and this I'm going to take a really sparse clump just to kind of sandwich that flash. Keep that flash under control a little bit is really the reason for doing this. If you guys ever have like bucktail that wants to kind of spread all over the place and you want to kind of keep it controlled, just do a little roll. And oftentimes that'll bring it together. Not really happy with it. There we go. Got that one really good. So I'm going to go in. Now this time I want it to be a little short of these butt ends. So I'm going to snip it right about there. Get my tying thread back up there. So what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm building just kind of a slight little slope going up. Same thing, pulling up and toward me. There we go. And all the way back to the start of the hook bend with this stuff. Okay, so I got a good looking tail going there. Let me go down like that. All right, the next thing to go in is some marabou. Do you have any questions yet, Joan, or is it not yet? Okay. So I don't know about you guys, but marabou over the years has just gotten worse and worse. I find it so hard to get good marabou. I'll get a clump and it'll only have a few good feathers in it. So this is olive marabou. Two of my favorite colors for saltwater flies are olive and white with a little flash. Use it on my clousers, half and halves, everything. But I have the fuzzy stuff trimmed off this feather. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use this little ramp that's going up there to kick that feather up just a little bit. And one of the things that I found is if you have some fibers down here and kind of roll them around like that, it will make that feather really stand up on there. We got a little stem that we're working with for a little structure, but that'll keep that thing angled up, which to me is desirable for this fly. Not really worried about too many thread wraps here. Now, the recipe also calls for 10 peacock curls, kind of arched over the back of the fly, looking like the back of a, I guess you guys call them pogies up there. We call them Manhattan or bunker down here. And all I'm going to do is, this is just regular strung peacock curl. I'm just going to, it says 10, but we're just going to kind of pull a bunch up like this. Keep on pulling. That's not quite 10, maybe a few more. You got a butt end in there, which I don't want. And so I don't want these tips too aligned, just kind of variable. And I guess that's about 10. If you have any that are really long, just pull them out. We'll get them back in the stack. So we end up something like that. Kind of looks a little ragged and natural at the back end of the fly. And all I'm going to do, just take those. I want them to extend just a little bit beyond those marabou tips. Lay them in on top of the hook shank. And I'm going to take thread wraps back up to secure them. Okay. So they kind of go like that. Rather than having them stick kind of straight up like that, I'll use the back of my scissors. Sometimes this works better than others, but just kind of go like this. And put a little bit of curl in there, just that natural curl, so they sweep back across the back of the fly. So looking pretty good. You know, it's pretty standard bait fish pattern at this point. You know, dark on the back, lighter on the belly, just like a natural bait fish has. So we're building in all the little components that a natural fish has. Now here comes the cool part about this pattern, is we're going to start to build up some cheeks, if you will, on it. And again, we're going to use marabou. This time a white marabou feather. And what I like to do is I'm going to turn my vise just a little bit. Hopefully it's all going to stay in focus. We'll zoom in just a little bit for this part of it, so you can see. Okay, and what we want is we want these to fan out. I want the tips of the marabou to be about halfway down that other marabou wing. And here's a little trick for you. You can use this, let's say you're tying in saddle hackle for a deceiver tail. And you want those saddle hackles to be absolutely vertical. Not that they have to be. Lefty didn't have them vertical, but you know, most people nowadays want to tie and get those things vertical. Here's a trick to do, and you can do it with those saddle hackles as well. Have some extra fiber down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay this feather in a position correctly. I'm actually going to wet my fingers just a little bit to keep that under control. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap like this. And I don't know whether you could see that. I'm going to kind of curve those fibers around. That's a little long for me. Sorry, guys. I'm going to shorten that up. But I'm going around, and it's pushing those fibers sort of around. And you can see then it wants to lay really, really flat and become a cheek right against that other material. Okay? So that's about the length I want. I'm going to snip that butt end off. Again, guys, you can probably see that we're starting to get a fair bit of material tied in here at the front of the fly. That's why we wanted to keep that eye length space. Now, I'm going to flip the fly over and basically do the same thing. If I can find my other marabou feather. Do you see the marabou feather, Johnny? That will work. And I'm going to go about the same length, kind of hold it over there, and again, just wrap that thread around, and that cheek should want to stay vertical. Really bind that down well on there. And as always, I'm trying to keep this ramp going down to the hook shank nice and smooth so there are no big cliffs for your thread to dive off of. It just makes the whole tying process much, much easier. All right, next step, we're going to keep on building the cheek. And the cheek on this fly is just a mallard flank feather. Beautiful markings. They kind of, I applaud Armand for putting it in as a cheek. I think the markings really help to make the fly look more natural. Most everything living has these little teeny markings on it. It's why materials like wood duck, Hungarian partridge, mallard flank, it's why they're all such good fly materials. They just have those natural markings in. And so I'm going to go, and I want it to extend just about as far, maybe a little less than that white marabou. And I'm going to strip off. Actually going to put both feathers together like this, get their tips aligned, and strip them together. So I have both same length, okay? And again, we're going to use that same technique. You might even be able to see it better here. Going to go like this, go over some of the fibers so they cup around like that. And as you can see, it results in a really nice flat cheek on the fly. Going to go back to the other side. Make sure they're relatively aligned. And then do that exact same thing. So you can probably see it there. I have that nice flat vertical piece right there, which gives the fly that wide profile, like you're going to get on a pogie, or even on a herring for that matter. A lot of different bait fish. Just going to go in and trim off those stems. And I'm going to keep on building up the head of this fly a little bit. On the example that I have from Peter Nielsen's book, the head looks like it's fairly elongated, so I've tried to do the same. The only other material really to go in at this point is some red marabou, which I really like the look of this. I'm going to wet it and kind of get it matted down. Now, with these, I don't even fuss around trying to tie it in on the underside of the hook. I'll just take a few wraps and then pull the material down and under, just like that. It's okay if a few little fibers point up there. Looks like gills or a little bit of blood or whatever. Okay, so the rest of this is just me building up the head of the fly. I'm going to take a significant number of wraps here. I found it looks a little better when it's kind of big. And you know, you got to trust me on this one, guys. This is one fly where you do not want to crowd the head as you're tying. It goes south real quick when you run out of room up there. And the fact of the matter is, I think it looks better with an elongated head. Just a little back to front whip finish. I'm actually going to do a second one. Get right up there behind the eye. That wasn't a very good whip finish, so I'm going to do one more. There we go. Okay, let's take a look, see, we're evened up pretty well on both sides. All looking good. A little bit of flash coming back. The last step on this thing, guys, is adding the eyes. And I'm going to use some hologram dome eyes. These are from Wapsi. Nice looking eyes. They're a little bigger than Armand suggested. He said 3/16. These are 1/4 inch on the 2-aught hook, but nice eyes. If you're like me, stick-on eyes have just driven me absolutely nuts for years. I end up gluing my fingers to the fly. They get just all gummed up and nasty. And one of the things that I found works better than anything else to get them stuck on there is a gel. Loctite makes a gel super glue. Zap does. There are a couple little tricks with it, but so what I do is just a light little drop right where I want that eye to go. You can see it's very gel-like. And I do one eye at a time. And the key with this is you put the eye on. I can still mess this up pretty good. Hold it for about 10 or 15 seconds. Really make yourself hold it there. Don't wiggle your finger. Don't do anything. Quite a bit of pressure. And really count, make sure you have that amount of time, 10 or 15 seconds. Don't short yourself on that one. Okay? And so usually that eye is stuck pretty well. By this point, it's got a little movement to it, but that's okay. So I'm going to go and repeat the process on the other side. Another little drop right there. And do my very best to get this eye aligned with the first eye. That's pretty good. And again, I'm going to squeeze down, really hold it for a good length of time. Hopefully I'm not gluing my finger to the fly. That does happen. And hopefully I'm not rearranging the other eye in the process. Okay? Try not to get any glue on my fingers because then that messes up the finish on the eye. I got away with that one. That's nice. Good. So, got that eye on that side. That one on that side. They're looking pretty good and even. I'm happy with that. Now, I normally, to finish this fly, I'd use UV Cure resin, but I've been having a sensitivity problem with the resin the last year or so, and it's from me being stupid with all sorts of different resins. Fixing surfboards and sailboats and all sorts of things when I was younger, and so I'm hypersensitized to it, and so here I'm just going to use some head cement, but by all means use the UV Cure resin if you got it. It works so much better. Really do love this stuff. I wish I could still use it. And I'm just going to go all the way around with my head cement. Actually get up on the eyes just a little bit like this. Get on that front edge of the eye, just something to hold them down. Spread this around, make sure my eye stays clear. And I'm just going to keep on rotating this a little in my tying vise as they finish up the fly. Let me cleaned up a little bit here, and we'll go back and hopefully answer some questions. I'm going to switch the camera back. Yeah, that's Armand's go-to fly. I hope some of you guys have some questions on it or questions for me. I'm more than happy to answer them. Not sure how many people, it doesn't look like we have that many people, so we could unmute if you want, Joan.
That has to be Anthony. I can't do it here.
You want to unmute Anthony? Can you do that?
Yep, I just did.
Okay, so you know, any questions that you guys have at all for me, I'm more than happy to answer. That tie went a lot quicker than I thought it would, to be honest with you.
That was quick.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it has a lot of materials, a lot of different materials in it, but it's really a fairly quick tie, and really like the profile on the thing for a peanut. You know, peanut bunker or Manhattan looks great.
Tim, do you use any other color combinations?
I don't. This is really my first time through with this fly, but yeah, I will definitely have some more color combinations. I'd like, for our herring that we have down here in the springtime, I'd like a little blue and gray in there as opposed to the olive. I think that would look real good, and white belly. And so, but you know, keep the cheeks. I love the mallard flank cheeks on this thing. I think they just look great. Look like scales, kind of real natural looking.
Somebody asked what the flash blend above the bucktail was.
It's just regular Flashabou. The kind of the medium size, not the small, not the large. And again, you could use anything you want. My favorite combination I alluded to earlier for anything saltwater anytime is an olive back, little bit of gold flash in the middle, and then a white belly. Whatever materials you're using, it could be bucktail, it could be craft fur, it could be all marabou, but for me, olive, little gold flash, and then white on the bottom. It's kind of my go-to fly. And so,
You've got another question there.
yeah. Can you read it to me? I can't see it.
Can you talk a bit about fly box management? Do you tie only when you're low on a pattern, or are you always tying and rotating your flies?
Oh, that's a
That's from Teddy.
That's a good question, Teddy, on fly box management. I'm a weirdo with this stuff because I split time between saltwater and freshwater, and so I'm kind of all over the place in that regard. And I have fly boxes that are dedicated for each one of those things, and I also have different boxes, particularly for the trout, for different seasons. I'm also a trout guide, which I have guide boxes as opposed to my own personal boxes. So that's a little different. And so, yeah, everything is broken up that way. But a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm tying the night before I fish. I know this seems a little weird, but I'll check. I've been guiding the day before, seeing the local conditions, and I'll tie to fit those conditions. They may be patterns that I've been tying for years. I may already have a dozen of them, but I'll tie up a dozen more of that particular pattern just so I know that I have them there. So yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask about that because I'm so all over the place with how I fish.
Could you maybe give us some tips about using dubbing loops and marabou and dubbing loops?
Sure.
We're managing that stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, dubbing loops are the thing as far as I'm concerned. And there are 3, maybe 4 different kinds of dubbing loops. And Each of them has merit. You start off a split thread is very much like a dubbing loop, and you're splitting your thread. You're putting in material, whether it's marabou, CDC, all sorts of stuff will fit between those that split thread strand. And a particularly lighter material do well with the split thread. But if you're doing a true dubbing loop where you make a loop with your tying thread, so you turn your thread into a big loop and then you insert materials into that and use a dubbing whirl at the bottom of that loop to loop everything up. The things you can do with the dubbing loop are really, really incredible. Whether it's a super tight dub body on a dry fly even, all the way up to one of the things I just kind of figured out is you can make a dubbing loop, use fairly thick thread like 140 denier, and take craft fur of all things, shove the craft fur into the dubbing loop and cut off the ends of it. So you only have about a ½ inch. Spin that sucker up and it makes a head like on a muddler minnow like nobody's business. Really, really cool way to do it. And if you guys, there's a video I did called a corded case caddis, which is a third kind of a dubbing loop. You might want to go and check that one out. It's a real neat way to take dubbing, and rather than having just a standard dubbing noodle, you can compress that dubbing down so it's almost like a fuzzy thread, really. And when you take wraps with it, it builds up a segmented body. It's a kind of a different technique, but if you're into the dubbing loops, it's a neat one. And I think you'll find all sorts of applications for it.
Tim, maybe you can talk about some substitutes you found for materials we can't get anymore, like seal's fur, heron feathers, etc. Things like that.
Yeah, there's in a lot of that stuff, is based in Atlantic salmon flies is really what it is, and that's where those materials really come into play. Like for seal fur, you can substitute Angora goat for seal fur, but I won't tell you where. But I actually got to see and tie with some real seal fur. I wasn't in the country, so I was doing nothing illegal. Unbelievable stuff. I hate to say it, there is no substitute for real seal fur. It's just an incredibly beautiful material. The iridescence, the way the thing works, but Angora is a pretty good substitute for it. A lot of the longer fibers, heron, their feathers on a pheasant, for example, kind of back by the rump of a pheasant, that will actually substitute fairly well for heron. Other things, of course, for wood duck, you could do mallard flank that's been dyed wood duck, but nowadays wood duck, although it's a little expensive, you're allowed to hunt wood duck again. When I was starting to tie, wood duck was so hard to find. I learned to hoard this stuff more than anything else. But yeah, that's another substitute material that we did for a long time. Mallard flank feathers that were dyed with tea or something like that. They kind of look like lemon wood duck. Any other materials you can think of, Anthony, that you had in mind, or?
No, that's those are some good suggestions.
Yeah,
a lot of people come in, asking for, all this stuff they can't find. Like polar bear would be another one.
Yeah. And again, once you see real polar bear, even yak fur, I guess, is sort of close. A bunch of synthetics are reasonable, but polar bear it's a very special material. There's just no doubt about it. Was there another question?
What was that?
I guess not.
Well, we might be able to get seals fur pretty soon if things keep going the way they're going in Massachusetts with all the seals everywhere.
Yeah, there's some of that. I don't know whether it was last year or the year before that somebody did a flyover of Monomoy, and the beach was just for 3 miles was nothing but seals. It was crazy.
So Tim, Ed Rosenblum said, what was the name again for the craft fur? I don't think there was really a name.
I didn't really use craft fur on this.
When you were talking about craft fur and your dubbing techniques.
Oh, with the dubbing techniques with the craft fur, really any kind of craft fur at all. The stuff from Hobby Lobby or the stuff that you get from a fly shop, it works fine for doing that. The other thing that I learned about craft, this is a weird one, guys, is if you take craft fur, you can, and it has a backing on it, like a kind of a woven backing. It's what the craft fur is stitched into. If you snip a length of that backing, so the craft fur is kind of angled backwards, imagine snipping your own zonker strips, but with craft fur. And that backing holds together, and you can make a craft fur zonker, which I had no idea you could do that. Just learned that a couple weeks ago. I'm actually considering doing one of the Orbis 1-minute tips and techniques videos on kind of all the things you can do with craft fur, because you know, people love it or you hate it, but the fact of the matter is when you're starting out tying, you don't want to be burning through really expensive materials, or if you're just going out and you're fishing for bluefish that are just going to tear up any fly you have, craft fur is fairly durable, and it's real cheap. Comes in every color of the rainbow. So I'm considering doing a video on the multi-uses of craft fur.
And there was one other question for salt. What's your go-to fly?
My go-to fly for saltwater, straight up, is a half and half and olive on the back, a little bit of gold, antique gold flash in the middle, and then white on the bottom. And the tail is actually, if you guys can hold on for 1 second, I know exactly where one is because I was tying them today. Here, I'll actually get rid of this one. And, you know, so Klausner's ride, or half and half's Klausner's ride, hook point up, but that's it, guys. I have, you know, boxes and boxes of all sorts of different saltwater flies, and I find myself reaching for this one. It doesn't matter whether it's pogies or herring or sand eels, silver sides. This fly, I got to give Jeff and Lynn Heyer out at Crossroads Outfitters out in Nantucket. They showed me this setup probably 15, 20 years ago, and it's become my confidence fly. I just love the thing. And I can time fairly quickly now. I do add a little red collar of Senyo's laser dub back there just for a little accent, but and pretty much standard on a 2-aught hook with large dumbbell eyes. And so, you know, when I'm down fishing, we have a great place to fish. It's about an hour and 10 minutes from me. It's Sandy Hook. You're out National Seashore. You're overlooking Manhattan, but they made it so it's over a mile walk in deep sand to get out there. No beach buggy access, and so it keeps the crowds down. Really an incredible place to fish, and whales right off the beach. And this is my standard fly every time I go down there. Just doesn't matter, spring, fall, summertime. Just as kind of a general imitative pattern.
Now, Tim, do you subscribe at all to the ideas that, you know, different color flies on bright days and dark days, or nighttime and daytime? You know, gold's good on this day, where silver flash would be good on this day, or are you kind of always just throwing this?
A lot of times I'm throwing the olive and white, and the only time I'll switch is once we get to dark, I'll go to the darker colors, purples and blacks and blues. And I'm not sure that that's anything other than just a confidence. I can't prove that that works better, but, and again, it's pretty much the same fly. It's a half and half, just in different colors. And I will, if I'm doing things like, we don't have too many of them here anymore. We're kind of on a down cycle, weak fish, squeeg, or whatever you want to call them. If I'm fishing midday, I fish those specifically on a specific tide. And so if it's midday, I'll fish bright flies, then pinks and like, you know, bubblegum pink or chartreuse. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much the olive and white.
And will you tie that in a bunch of different sizes, or pretty much that?
Yeah, the 2-aught for saltwater to me just seems to do everything. And, you know, from little schooly bass that are 17, 18 inches all the way up to the big slobs. And they'll take it out of, you know, a big, so, you know, I carry a whole bunch of flies, bangers and crease flies and regular clousers, regular deceivers, surf candies, Popovic shrimp. But again, I'll be honest with you, this is 90% of the time is what's on my tippet.
Ed would like to know what the hook on the fly is that you're showing right now.
This is the same hook I tied Armand's fly on. It's a Mustad 34007 2-aught, and you know, I get boxes, 100 hook boxes, you know, 3 or 4 at a time. It just makes things easier for me. That's kind of my favorite hook. I know there are better hooks out there now, but you know, you get used to something.
Is there a reason you choose the stainless version over the?
I prefer the non-stainless version, with the thought that, you know, if you break one off in a fish, that the non-stainless is going to rust out a little sooner. I do have them rusting in my box if I'm not careful. I'm pretty nuts about taking my gear and rinsing it in fresh water and letting it dry pretty thoroughly when I'm done, in the salt water in particular. But yeah, I think I like the regular iron as opposed to the stainless. I've broken the stainless. Maybe that's just me. I think it's a little more brittle than the regular stuff. Bluefish will break them every now and then. What else do we have? Anything? All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for having me. That was fun. I hope you learned something. And yeah, if any questions, you can email me or leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and hopefully we'll see you out on the water sometime soon.